Hey, Mr. P here. In this video, we're going to expand on our discussion of mitosis, which was talked about or covered in the last video, and talk about what mitosis is in terms of the whole organism and why mitosis is important for the whole organism. We discussed the stages of mitosis, specifically PMAT in the last video. We also kind of talked about the entirety of the cell cycle. And so as a review, remember the entire cell cycle is going to be a circle composed of kind of two phases, which is interphase, okay, which is made up of G1, S, and G2. G1 obviously stands for gap 1. That's where the majority of the cell growth and organelle duplication takes place. S is DNA replication. G2 would be gap 2, where enzymes essential for mitotic division will be synthesized. And then M phase, which is characterized by PMAT, that stands for prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. This is the cell cycle, and so for the purposes of this video, I'm going to assume that you have the cell cycle and the mitotic division or mitosis process understood. And we're going to move into why mitosis is essential for growth and cell replacement at the organism level. Okay, so specifically at the organism level, why is mitosis essential and why is it necessary in order to keep not only the organism healthy but alive? Okay, so before we kind of get into the why, we need to understand kind of where mitosis happens, right? And so it can happen throughout the body, and it happens in different places depending on the cell type. Some cells retain the capacity to divide throughout life cycle and some do not. And so I'm going to kind of highlight some examples of those that do and those that don't, and the differences that those allow the organism in terms of kind of organismal complexity. Okay, so the first one that we need to talk about is bone marrow. Now, inside of every bone in your body, more notably in the long bones or the large bones of the upper arm and the upper leg, you have cells that are inside kind of the pith of this bone marrow that are called blood stem cells, okay, sometimes called bone stem cells. These are the adult stem cells that have the ability or retain the ability to differentiate and specialize into a few different cells that are going to be incredibly important for the organism throughout adulthood. Okay, these blood stem cells are going to actually produce the mature red blood cells. They're going to produce mature white blood cells. They're going to also produce platelets. All of those things originate in your blood or originate in the bones and then will enter the bloodstream through capillaries that are connected to larger blood vessels that kind of travel along the bone surface. Okay, these blood stem cells are going to actually constantly or continually move through the cell cycle and continually divide via mitosis around the clock until you die. All right, they produce roughly 2 million red blood cells alone each second, and happens basically from the moment of birth or even through fetal development, but the moment of birth through adulthood and until death. So these are going to continually move through that cell cycle continuously, uninterrupted forever. The skin cells are going to be the same way. Okay, you are constantly exposed to hazardous environmental conditions, UV light, harsh chemicals potentially in the environment, like salt or non-ideal salinities, non-ideal pHs. And so because skin is the barrier between the outside of the body and the inside of the body, this skin layer is constantly being sloughed off and therefore has to be kind of reloaded from the bottom. And so you have multiple layers of skin. The layers are unimportant for the purposes of this class, but these cells are going to constantly divide and produce more cells via mitosis all the way through adulthood because you're constantly needing to replace the dead and damaged cells that make up the skin layer that are being sloughed off constantly. Okay, and so these skin layers are going to kind of move through mitosis. They're going to eventually be sloughed off. But it's important for you as an organism that is subjected to a lot of adverse environmental conditions to continually replace the cells that are being damaged or dying as the result of just the normal wear and tear of life. Okay? Now, there are other types of cells in your body that never divide, and most of those are related to the nervous system. Okay? This is the reason why brain injuries and spinal cord injuries and just nervous system injuries are so detrimental. You know, when we talk about injuries and kind of just even go through these examples that are on the screen, it is totally possible for an organism to break a bone. And while that is a pretty traumatic or can be a pretty traumatic injury, bones, sometimes using medical intervention and surgical intervention, will repair themselves and will fix themselves through mitotic division. Okay? Bones don't stay broken forever. They will be replaced with new bone cells. They will fuse along the break, and they will help to fix the bone, and therefore will not remain broken forever. Same with skin. You can cut, tear, scrape, rip skin, and it will constantly repair itself via mitosis in order to fix that open wound, so that the layer, that is the boundary between the inside and outside of your body, will become intact. Nervous system injuries like spinal cord injuries, brain injuries are not good and can usually not be repaired because of the fact that these cells that make up your nervous system, like brain cells and neurons and nerves, cannot replicate themselves, and so once they're damaged forever. So, to kind of wrap up, we've got some cells in the body, most cells in the body can go through mitosis and therefore can repair themselves. One of the cells that is a large portion of your body that we didn't talk about in the previous slide was muscle cells. Obviously, muscle cells are not going to divide as frequently as bone cells or skin cells, but they still do divide. If you tear a muscle or pull a muscle or you stretch a muscle, those muscle cells can replace themselves. It takes a little longer than skin cells, per se, but those cells do go through mitotic division and therefore can replicate themselves. Neurons cannot. So, we've got cell cycle that we've already established, which is that interphase and the M phase, okay? Kind of starting at G1, going through S, navigating through G2, and then entering M phase. So cell cycle regulation. How is that cell cycle regulated? And it is regulated through a series of CDK and cyclin interactions. Okay? You'll see throughout this cell cycle, which we'll just put cell cycle, G1, S, G2, M phase, is constantly regulated by these CDKs. You can see CDK, you can see CDK, 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 CDK. CDK stands for cyclin dependent kinase. ACE, as a suffix, obviously should tell you that it's an enzyme, and this is an enzyme that is totally dependent on a cyclin. Cyclin would be the substrate that the enzyme acts upon. Okay, so we'll just put enzyme. CDK, for short, cyclin-dependent kinase, is an enzyme that acts on a substrate, as all enzymes do, the substrate being a specific cyclin. Now, there are different types of cyclin. You have cyclin C, E, A, B. There is also a cyclin D, and all of those cyclins, which are different substrates, different molecules that kind of fluctuate in concentration. Notice concentration is on the Y, G1, S, G2, and then M phase is on the X. And so we basically term this cycle into a graphable kind of event. And so we can look at the concentration of these cyclins as they increase and decrease throughout the entirety of the cell cycle. Okay? Cyclin C is going to be constantly kind of increasing and then decreasing, but totally present throughout the entirety of the cell cycle. It's obviously going to increase towards S phase, stay high through G2, and then will fall at the conclusion of mitosis. Cyclin E is going to peak specifically at S phase. Cyclin A is going to peak specifically at the G2 phase, and cyclin B is going to peak specifically at mitosis. Now, when we look at the concentrations of these cyclins and when they peak, that gives us an indication of when they are used or what they might regulate. Cyclin E, for instance, is going to regulate the transition from G1 to S, meaning it's most likely going to regulate something to do with DNA replication, which we know happens in S phase. Cyclin A is going to increase right at the conclusion or right towards the middle of G2 and probably has a regulatory function on the cell entering mitosis. And then cyclin B, peaking right at the beginning of mitosis, probably has a regulatory function that regulates something to do with the actual event of cell division. Okay? Erase this out. So, cell cycles are regulated by cyclin, that is the substrate, and CDK, that is the enzyme, interactions between those cyclin and CDKs. However, occasionally cells escape from the cell cycle regulation and grow uncontrollably, forming cancerous tumors. Cell cycle regulation is all about cell cycle control. Okay? Cell cycle regulation. If a cell remains regulated, it is going to remain controlled. If a cell becomes unregulated, that equals cancer, okay, and can be malignant or benign, but unregulated cell cycle or unregulated cell cycle control or unregulated cell growth is the basis for cancer, okay? Then there's a topic called the Hayflick limit that we need to understand. The Hayflick limit is literally the number of divisions a specific type of cell can and typically undergoes in a lab setting. And so what I say by a lab setting is it is controlled. All variables are controlled. The number of divisions are very correctly or easily monitored. Okay? But the Hayflick limit is basically the number of specific divisions in a lab that a specific type of cell can undergo before it stops dividing. Okay? Now, Hayflick limit is related in a lot of cases to telomere length. What are telomeres? Telomeres are the end caps, which are protection for the DNA contained within the chromosomes. Now, I know in this class we've talked a little bit about DNA structure. We've talked a little bit about genes and what genes are and what chromosomes are. Remember, as a review, genes are little bands that are sections of DNA that are going to be housed or contained within the overall structure of a chromosome. There are no regulatory genes on the telomeres. The telomeres are specifically protective caps, okay? And as the number of divisions happen, or every time a cell undergoes a division, the cell has to replicate the DNA, right? Because it has to go through an entire cell cycle before it can divide. So this cell goes through its entire cell cycle, G1, S, G2. In S phase, it duplicates its DNA and then divides. So one cell becomes a 2. Then these two cells will go through their cell cycle, G1, S, which means duplicate their DNA, before going to G2 and then into M phase before they can divide and produce 2 cells each. Well, every time a cell replicates its DNA, it shortens unintentionally. It's just kind of a collateral damage example. It shortens the telomeres slightly. So every time a cell divides, the telomere length gets shorter, and then it divides and the telomere gets shorter, and then it divides and the telomeres get shorter. Eventually, the telomeres run out. And when the telomeres run out, the cell no longer can keep the DNA safe. It no longer has protective caps. The DNA now is exposed to all of the enzymes that are associated with the cytoplasm, and the DNA can literally be kind of degraded and can be dissolved by the normal enzymatic activities of the cytoplasm. There is a theory out right now that aging in general is related specifically to telomere length, okay? That the shortening process of these telomeres causes directly, okay, telomere length is directly related to aging. Now, as telomeres shorten, the theory postulates that individuals age, that individuals express the traits or express the symptoms, if you will, of aging, okay? Some degeneration of physical complexions, right? Skin degenerates, cognitive ability, speed, muscle mass, all of these things that typically happen with normal aging are in a lot of cases related directly to the fact that we no longer can properly protect our DNA molecules. And if we can't protect our DNA molecules, the traits that we're born with and the traits that we exhibit through kind of early adulthood no longer can be expressed like they were supposed to be, and the entire body starts kind of degrading, and it leads to the aging symptoms that we've always kind of become accustomed to. Now, one of the genetic disorders is progeria. Now, progeria is a genetic disorder in which 7 or 8-year-olds, and even younger, okay, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, look as if they're 70 or 80 years old. Okay, now why would there be, or what is the significance of a genetic disorder that affects the appearance of aging? Well, progeria is a genetic disorder that is totally affecting the telomere length and this Hayflick limit as a whole. And so if the individuals have shortened telomeres, or if the individuals have a shortened Hayflick limit, meaning the cells in these individuals can't divide as many times as individuals or normal individuals, then they're going to age at an increased rate. That's really good evidence for the theory that telomere length and this Hayflick limit leads to the aging process overall. Okay? This disorder is associated with defects in DNA repair and switch cells from the growth to a maintenance mode, having divisions for short or having halting divisions far short of the Hayflick limit, like I just said. Okay? Progeria is a genetic disorder that affects the cell's ability to control itself and therefore limits the number of times the cell can divide normally, which shortens the Hayflick limit for these individuals, and it leads to an increased rate of aging. Very, very interesting. There is probably more to understand about this theory, but right now it looks really promising. Okay, if we find a way to increase telomere length, if we find a way to stop telomere shortening, if we find a way to potentially allow ourselves to regenerate telomeres, then perhaps we can use science intervention or science technology to actually stop the aging process or even reverse the aging process and greatly increase the lifespan of organisms and or humans. So very interesting, right on kind of the cusp of scientific breakthrough right now, but definitely more from that to come. Okay, bring your questions to class. See ya.